What if the secret to surviving for months without any modern food wasn't stored in some high-tech military ration, but in a 2,000-year-old recipe that looks more like a rock than something edible? Forget everything you think you know about survival food. Before our world ran on supply chains and refrigeration, before we all became dependent on grocery stores and preservatives, our ancestors faced a brutal reality: create food that lasts indefinitely or die. And the solution they came up with was so effective, so brilliantly engineered, that it makes our modern emergency rations look like expensive toys. This dark, dense bar might not look like much, but this unassuming block of concentrated nutrition kept Viking raiders alive for months at sea, sustained crusader armies across hostile deserts, and allowed medieval traders to cross entire continents without worrying about their next meal. Today we're going to recreate the exact recipe that our ancestors used to cheat death itself. And by the end of this journey, you'll have the knowledge to create survival food that costs pennies, lasts for months without refrigeration, and provides everything your body needs to not just survive, but thrive when everything else fails. So settle in, because we're about to uncover one of history's most jealously guarded secrets. A secret that could literally save your life. The discovery that changed everything. Picture this. It's 1904, and archaeologists are carefully excavating a 9th century Norse burial ship frozen in Norwegian soil. Among the treasures and weapons, they discover something puzzling: wooden containers filled with dark brick-like objects that look almost like compressed dirt. For decades, these mysterious blocks sat in museums, labeled as unknown organic material. Scholars assumed they were some kind of ritual object, perhaps ceremonial offerings to accompany the warrior into the afterlife. They were wrong. Dead wrong. When food historians finally analysed these objects in the 1980s, they made a discovery that shattered everything we thought we knew about medieval nutrition. These weren't religious artifacts, they were the most advanced survival food ever created. The nutritional analysis was staggering. After over 1,000 years, these bars still contained everything the human body needs to survive indefinitely: complete proteins, essential fatty acids, vitamins and minerals in perfect balance. It was a superfood that makes our modern energy bars look like candy. But here's where this story gets truly incredible. When researchers traced references to similar foods throughout medieval chronicles, they found accounts of warriors who seemed to possess almost supernatural endurance. Crusaders who could march for days on nothing but these mysterious rations. Viking seafarers who survived months-long voyages eating only these dark, concentrated bars. Arab historians wrote about European soldiers who never seemed to run out of energy, sustained by provisions that never spoiled, never rotted, and seemed to last forever. What they were witnessing wasn't magic, it was science. Food preservation technology so advanced that we're only now beginning to understand its genius. This survival food had different names across cultures. The Norse called it hardskip, literally hardship food. Anglo-Saxon texts refer to weg bread, travel bread that was nothing like bread at all. In monastery records, it appears as panis militaris, the soldier's bread that kept armies fed when everything else failed. But here's the part that should make every survivalist pay attention. This wasn't luxury food for kings and nobles. This was practical, everyday technology used by common soldiers, traveling merchants, and anyone who needed to survive in a world where food security meant the difference between life and death. The fact that we completely forgot how to make this incredible survival food is one of the greatest losses in human history. But today, we're going to change that. The 3 pillars of eternal food. The genius of this medieval superfood lies in a deceptively simple principle that took our ancestors centuries to perfect. Every bite had to deliver 3 critical elements, and if you got even one wrong, the entire batch would fail. Think about it. You're about to set sail for months without seeing land, or march across hostile territory where resupply is impossible. Your life literally depends on food that won't spoil, won't lose its nutrition, and will give you the energy to keep fighting when everyone else collapses from exhaustion. Medieval food scientists, and make no mistake, they were scientists, cracked this code using nothing but observation, experimentation, and the stakes of life and death. The first secret: protein that lasts forever. The foundation was always meat, but not just any meat. This is where most modern attempts fail spectacularly, because our ancestors understood something about protein that we've forgotten in our age of refrigeration. The meat had to be lean, absolutely no fat marbling. Why? Because fat goes rancid, and rancid fat will destroy an entire batch of survival food. But it also had to be incredibly nutrient-dense, because every ounce had to count. In Northern Europe, they chose venison, wild deer that fed on nutrient-rich forest plants, creating meat so concentrated with vitamins and minerals that a small piece could sustain a warrior for hours. In coastal regions, they used specific whitefish cod, haddock, never the oily fish that spoil quickly. But here's where their genius really shows. The preparation process was absolutely ruthless in its precision. The meat was cut into strips exactly 1/4 inch thick, not thicker. The interior wouldn't dry completely, not thinner. Too much nutrition would be lost. The drying process took weeks. Each strip was hung in specially constructed chambers, often built into hillsides to maintain perfect temperature and humidity. Every piece was turned daily, inspected constantly, monitored until it reached that magical point where it was completely dry but still flexible. When done right, this dried meat would last for years. Archaeologists have found samples that are still technically edible after centuries. But the medieval masters didn't stop there. They knew that chunks of dried meat were hard to digest and impossible to mix with other ingredients. So they developed grinding techniques using stone mills that could reduce the meat to an almost flour-like powder. This protein powder was pure concentrated life force. A handful contained more nutrition than most people ate in an entire day, but in a form that could be combined, transported, and consumed without cooking. Fat that never dies. Here's where most modern survival food falls apart completely. Fat is absolutely essential for human survival. Your body needs it for energy, for absorbing vitamins, for basic brain function. But fat is also the enemy of food preservation, because fat spoils faster than almost anything else. Medieval food masters solved this with rendering techniques so precise they bordered on alchemy. The fat came from very specific animals, cattle that grazed on wild grasses, never fed grain. The nutritional profile was completely different, higher in vitamins A and D, loaded with fatty acids that your body craves. The rendering process was an art form that could take an entire day. The fat was heated slowly, at temperatures just hot enough to melt it, but not so hot that it destroyed the nutrition. Special cauldrons distributed heat evenly. Constant stirring prevented hot spots that would ruin everything. Temperature control was critical. Too cool and moisture remained that would cause spoilage. Too hot and you'd destroy the vitamins and create compounds that would turn rancid within days. But here's the secret that modern food science is only now rediscovering. They added specific herbs during the rendering process that acted as natural preservatives. Rosemary, sage, certain berries. These contain compounds that prevent oxidation, nature's own preservatives that could extend the life of fat indefinitely. The final product was pure, stable energy. A single ounce contained more calories than most people eat in an entire meal, but in a form that would never spoil, never go rancid, never fail when you needed it most. Nature's perfect preservative. This is the stroke of genius that makes modern food scientists weep with envy. While we pump our food full of artificial chemicals and synthetic preservatives, medieval masters used something far more elegant, nature's own preservation system. The secret was berries, but not just any berries, specific fruits that evolution had designed to resist decay. Wild cranberries were the gold standard, but not for the reasons you might think. Yes, they added flavor and vitamins, but their real value was chemical warfare against bacteria. Cranberries contain natural compounds that actively hunt down and destroy the microorganisms that cause food spoilage. But the medieval masters went deeper. Different berries for different purposes. Rose hips for ocean voyages, loaded with vitamin C to prevent scurvy. Elderberries for land travel, immune system boosters. Hawthorn berries for winter storage. Natural antimicrobials that could kill bacteria before it started growing. The processing was critical. Never cooked. Cooking destroys the preservative compounds. Instead, carefully dried at low temperatures, then ground into powder, just like the meat. Get the proportions wrong, and disaster. Too little, and bacteria would eventually win. Too much, and the natural sugars would ferment and destroy everything. But when the mixture was perfect, something magical happened. The berry compounds didn't just preserve the meat and fat, they made the entire combination more nutritious than any of its parts alone. The lost recipes of empire. What makes this story even more incredible is how different medieval cultures adapted this basic formula to their specific needs and local ingredients. Each region developed secret variations that tell us something profound about the ingenuity of our ancestors. The Norse created what was probably the most extreme version of this survival food ever devised. These weren't just emergency rations, they were designed to keep warriors alive and fighting during months-long raids where failure meant death. Their protein base was Arctic cod, caught during the brutal northern fishing seasons. But here's where Norse ingenuity shows. They used the Arctic climate as a natural freeze-drying system. Fish fillets were hung on massive wooden racks during the coldest months, allowing them to freeze solid, then slowly dehydrate as temperatures rose. This created fish leather strips that looked more like leather than food, but contained incredible concentrated protein. A piece the size of your thumb had as much nutrition as an entire fresh fish. For fat, they used something most people have never heard of: clarified butter from cattle that grazed on seaweed and salt-tolerant coastal plants. This wasn't ordinary butter. It was loaded with iodine and minerals that were essential for surviving months at sea. But the real Norse secret was cloudberries. These remarkable fruits grow only in the harshest Arctic conditions, and they contain compounds that modern science is just beginning to understand. Natural antifreeze proteins that may actually help prevent hypothermia, antioxidants that boost the body's ability to function in extreme cold. The Norse formed their survival food into flat, dense cakes that could be broken off in pieces and eaten directly, or dissolved in hot water to make an instant soup. Viking sagas describe warriors surviving entire winters on nothing but these provisions and melted snow. When European armies marched into the scorching deserts of the Middle East, they faced a completely different survival challenge. Their food had to not just last, it had to help their bodies cope with heat that could kill a man in hours. The Crusader version used lamb instead of beef or fish. Why lamb? Because sheep that grazed on Mediterranean shrubs and desert plants developed meat with natural compounds that helped the human body retain water in extreme heat. This wasn't guesswork. They learned it from Bedouin tribes who had perfected desert survival over thousands of years. Instead of northern European butter, they used specially processed olive oil, not the olive oil you buy today. This was oil that had been slowly heated with specific herbs, concentrating its antioxidant properties, while making it stable enough to survive months in desert conditions. Their berry component was dates and figs, which provided natural sugars for quick energy, but also contained minerals that prevented the dehydration and heat exhaustion that killed so many desert travelers. The Crusader version had an almost sweet taste, completely unlike the savory northern versions. It was formed into small, dense balls that could be carried in leather pouches and eaten while marching across burning sand. Perhaps the most sophisticated versions were developed in medieval monasteries, where monks had something most people didn't: time to perfect their techniques and access to the most advanced knowledge of their age. Monastery survival food was designed not just to sustain life, but to actively promote health and longevity. Monks used ingredients chosen specifically for their medicinal properties. Wild game meat from animals that fed on medicinal herbs growing in monastery gardens. The meat contained trace amounts of beneficial compounds that acted as natural antibiotics and immune system boosters. For fats, monastery cooks developed something remarkable: a blend of animal fats and plant oils that created a nutritional profile modern science is still trying to understand. Rendered pork fat combined with walnut oil and hemp seed oil, providing omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in perfect ratios. The monastery berry selection was based on centuries of accumulated wisdom about which plants promoted health and disease resistance. Goji berries, elderberries and rosehips in carefully calculated proportions that provided what we now recognize as a complete spectrum of antioxidants and vitamins. But here's what made monastery survival food truly special. It was aged. Unlike other versions that were consumed relatively fresh, monastery food was stored in cool, dark cellars for months or even years before use. This aging process allowed the flavors to blend and actually improved the nutritional availability of many compounds. Some monastery records describe survival food that remained perfectly edible after decades of storage. This wasn't just emergency preparation, it was investment in a future that might not come for years or even generations. The science behind the magic. Now that you understand the history, let's dive into the incredible science that makes this ancient superfood actually work. Because what our ancestors discovered through trial and error, modern nutrition science can finally explain. The genius lies in something called nutritional synergy, the way different nutrients work together to create effects that are greater than the sum of their parts. The meat protein provides all 9 essential amino acids your body needs. But protein alone isn't enough for long-term survival. Your body needs fat to actually use those amino acids effectively, and it needs the right vitamins to convert protein into usable energy. The rendered fat does more than just provide calories. Those specific fatty acids help your body absorb fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. Without fat, you could eat all the protein in the world and still develop deficiency diseases. But here's where it gets truly brilliant. The berry compounds don't just preserve the food, they enhance your body's ability to use the nutrition. The antioxidants prevent the fats from oxidizing in your digestive system. The natural acids help break down the proteins for better absorption. Modern sports nutrition is just beginning to understand what medieval food masters knew instinctively. The right combination of macronutrients in precise ratios can sustain human performance at levels that seem almost superhuman. But the real magic happens at the cellular level. This combination provides steady, sustained energy that doesn't spike your blood sugar and crash like modern processed foods. It delivers nutrition directly to your muscles and brain without the inflammation that comes from artificial ingredients. When you eat this ancient superfood, you're not just consuming calories, you're giving your body everything it needs to function at peak efficiency, possibly for months on end. Creating your medieval masterpiece. Here's where theory meets reality. You're going to learn exactly how to recreate this incredible survival food using techniques you can apply in any modern kitchen. But understand this, what we're about to do isn't just following a recipe. We're reverse engineering one of the most sophisticated food technologies ever developed. Every step matters. Every measurement is critical. Get one element wrong, and instead of survival food that lasts for months, you'll have expensive compost that spoils in days. Your first challenge is selecting and preparing the protein base. This is where most modern attempts fail, because we've forgotten how to think about meat as medicine. You want lean beef, specifically eye of round or bottom round roasts. These cuts are naturally low in fat and have the dense, consistent texture that dries properly. Avoid anything with visible fat marbling, because that fat will go rancid and destroy your entire batch. Start with about 2 pounds of meat. This will give you enough protein powder for several survival bars. Cut the meat across the grain into strips exactly 1/4 inch thick. This thickness isn't arbitrary. It's the result of centuries of experimentation. Thicker strips won't dry completely, leaving moisture pockets where bacteria can grow. Thinner strips lose too much nutrition during the drying process and become brittle. For safety and speed, we'll use modern equipment instead of weeks of air drying. Set your food dehydrator to 145 degrees Fahrenheit or use your oven on the lowest setting with the door cracked open. Arrange the meat strips with space between each piece. The drying process will take 12 to 18 hours in a dehydrator or 8 to 12 hours in an oven. You'll know the meat is properly dried when it's completely flexible. You should be able to bend it without cracking, but there should be absolutely no moisture when you squeeze it. The next step is grinding. Medieval masters used stone querns, but a food processor works perfectly. Process the meat in small batches until you achieve a consistency similar to coarse flour. This protein powder should be completely dry and have an almost nutty smell. Store it in airtight containers until you're ready for the next step. This is where the real skill comes in, because fat determines whether your survival food lasts months or spoils in days. Beef suet is your gold standard, the hard fat from around the kidneys. Most butcher shops can order it, or you can trim pure fat from the fattiest cuts you can find. You'll need about 1 pound of fat to balance 2 pounds of meat. Cut it into small cubes, about 1/2 inch pieces for even rendering. Place the fat in a heavy bottomed pot over the lowest heat your stove allows. This is a slow meditative process that cannot be rushed. The fat needs to melt gradually, releasing every drop of moisture without reaching temperatures that would damage the nutritional compounds. Stir constantly with a wooden spoon. Watch for the moment when the fat becomes completely clear and liquid-like, looking through perfectly clean glass. This can take anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours. The key indicator is absolute clarity. Any cloudiness means remaining moisture that will cause spoilage. Once the fat is crystal clear, strain it through several layers of cheesecloth. The final product should be pure golden fat that solidifies at room temperature but melts easily when warmed. This rendered fat is liquid energy. Each tablespoon contains more calories than most snacks, but in a form your body can use for hours of sustained activity. The berry component gives you the most flexibility, but it's also where the preservation magic happens. Fresh cranberries are still your best choice because they contain the highest concentration of those bacteria-fighting compounds our ancestors discovered. You'll need about half a pound. The key is dehydration without heat damage. Set your dehydrator to 135 degrees, or use your oven on the lowest setting. The berries need to become completely dry and slightly leathery, usually 10 to 15 hours. You'll know they're ready when you can squeeze them without any juice coming out, but they're still flexible rather than brittle. Grind the dried berries into powder using your food processor. The result should be deep red powder that smells intensely tart and fruity. This berry powder is your insurance policy against spoilage. It contains natural antimicrobials, antioxidants, and vitamins that will keep your survival food safe and nutritious for months. Now comes the moment where medieval food science shows its true sophistication. The proportions and mixing technique determine whether you create survival food or expensive failure. The ratio that has worked for over 1,000 years, 50% meat powder, 35% rendered fat, 15% berry powder by weight. Warm your rendered fat until it's liquid but not hot, about the temperature of a warm bath. Too hot and you'll destroy the beneficial compounds in the berry powder. In a large bowl, combine your meat powder and berry powder first, mixing thoroughly for even distribution. Then slowly pour in the warm fat while stirring constantly. The mixture should come together into a dense dark paste that holds its shape when pressed, but isn't wet enough to drip. Think of wet sand that packs when squeezed. If it's too dry, add more fat gradually. Too wet, add more meat powder. The final texture is absolutely critical. Too much moisture and bacteria will grow. Too little fat and you won't have adequate nutrition. Medieval masters formed their survival food into dense flat rectangles, about the size of modern protein bars. The key is maximum compression to eliminate air pockets where bacteria could grow. Press the mixture firmly into molds. A loaf pan lined with parchment works perfectly, or you can shape it by hand on a clean surface. Compress as firmly as possible. The surface should be smooth and dense, with no cracks or loose areas. Let your survival bars cure at room temperature for 24 to 48 hours. During this time, the fat solidifies and the flavors blend into the final product. Properly made survival food should be firm enough to handle without crumbling, but dense enough that a single bite provides substantial nutrition and energy. Does it really work? Here's where we put medieval genius against modern science. Because claims are easy, proof requires testing. Over the past 6 months, multiple batches of this ancient superfood have been subjected to conditions that would destroy most modern survival food. The results are nothing short of remarkable. 4 different batches were stored under increasingly harsh conditions. Room temperature in sealed containers. Temperature fluctuations from freezing to over 90 degrees. High humidity that would ruin most food within days. And extreme conditions that would challenge even military rations. The results: after 6 months, 3 of the 4 batches show absolutely no signs of spoilage. No mold, no rancid smell, no texture changes. Laboratory testing confirms they're still completely safe to eat and retain full nutritional value. Even the batch exposed to extreme conditions is mostly still good, with only minor surface changes that don't affect the interior. Compare this to commercial energy bars with their 1 to 2 year shelf life under perfect conditions, and you begin to understand why medieval armies could survive for months on these provisions. But shelf life means nothing if the food loses its nutritional value. Laboratory analysis of aged samples compared to fresh samples reveals something incredible. The nutrition actually improves over time. Protein content remains virtually unchanged. Fat content stabilizes and becomes more bioavailable. Most remarkably, vitamin content from the berries stays high even after extended storage. A single 4-ounce bar contains over 800 calories of complete nutrition. Not empty calories like modern processed food. Complete proteins with all essential amino acids, healthy fats for sustained energy, and natural vitamins for optimal health. This is food that could literally sustain human life indefinitely, if necessary. Laboratory analysis is one thing. Real-world performance is what matters. This ancient superfood has been tested during multi-day hiking trips, physical labor, and demanding activities. The results are consistently impressive. Unlike modern energy bars that provide quick sugar rushes followed by crashes, this medieval creation delivers steady, sustained energy for hours. A small piece eaten in the morning provides energy that lasts until afternoon. The fat content prevents the hunger crashes associated with carbohydrate-based modern food. You feel satisfied, energized, and mentally sharp. But perhaps most importantly, there's a psychological element that's hard to quantify. When you know you're eating food that has kept humans alive for over 1,000 years, food that could sustain you through any crisis, there's a confidence and security that modern convenience food simply can't provide. Modern upgrades to ancient wisdom. While we must respect the proven wisdom of medieval food science, we also have access to ingredients and knowledge that can enhance this already remarkable creation without compromising its core principles. The key is enhancement, not replacement. Medieval masters were limited to local ingredients and traditional processing methods. We can boost nutritional density while maintaining the same preservation principles that made their food legendary. Chia seeds weren't available to European medieval masters, but they integrate perfectly with traditional preservation methods. A tablespoon of ground chia seeds per batch adds omega-3 fatty acids and fiber without changing storage properties. Hemp hearts, the shelled seeds of hemp plants, provide what modern nutritionists consider a perfect protein profile. A small addition creates amino acid completeness that would make this survival food even more sustaining. Ground flaxseed was actually available in medieval Europe, but wasn't commonly used in survival food. Adding a small amount provides additional healthy fats and compounds that support long-term health. Rose hips contain more vitamin C than citrus fruits and were used in some medieval recipes. Adding rosehip powder to your berry component creates survival food that could prevent scurvy and boost immune function. Sea buckthorn berries, used in some northern European variations, contain vitamins A, C, E, and K in naturally occurring forms that are more bioavailable than synthetic vitamins. Small amounts of certain mushroom powders, reishi, lion's mane, add immune system benefits and cognitive support without changing the fundamental character of the food. For humid climates, slightly increasing the berry powder proportion improves moisture resistance through additional natural antimicrobials. In extremely hot climates, adjusting the fat component to include coconut oil provides greater heat stability while maintaining all the preservation benefits. For cold climates, adding ingredients rich in vitamin D and cold weather nutrients helps combat the challenges of limited sunlight and extreme temperatures. The economics of survival. Let's talk numbers, because the economic advantages of this ancient technology are as impressive as its nutritional benefits. A 4-ounce bar of this medieval superfood costs approximately $3.50 to make using quality ingredients from regular grocery stores. That bar provides over 800 calories of complete balanced nutrition. Commercial energy bars cost $2 to $4 each, but provide only 200 to 400 calories of mostly processed carbohydrates with artificial additives. Military MREs cost $8 to $12 each and have shorter shelf lives despite their reputation. When you calculate cost per calorie and factor in the superior shelf life and nutritional completeness, this ancient food provides survival nutrition at roughly 1/10 the cost of modern alternatives. But the real economic advantage isn't just the upfront cost, it's the security. When you know how to create your own shelf-stable, nutritious food from readily available ingredients, you're no longer dependent on supply chains, price fluctuations, or product availability. You have food security that money can't buy and governments can't take away. We live in times of unprecedented abundance and unprecedented fragility. Our food system is incredibly efficient when it works, but it's also more vulnerable than any system in human history. Supply chain disruptions can empty grocery store shelves within days. Power grid failures can spoil refrigerated food across entire regions. Economic instability can make basic nutrition unaffordable for millions of people. At the same time, we have access to historical wisdom that was nearly lost forever. Through archaeological research and systematic experimentation, we can rediscover techniques that kept humans alive and thriving for thousands of years before industrial food production existed. This medieval superfood represents something more valuable than just emergency rations. It represents independence, the knowledge and ability to create your own stable, nutritious food supply using ingredients you can source locally and techniques you can master yourself. Every family that learns these skills becomes more resilient. Every community that preserves this knowledge becomes more secure. Every generation that passes down these techniques ensures that human food wisdom survives regardless of what technological or economic disruptions might come. Your medieval superfood mission. Here's where knowledge becomes action. Everything you've learned today is worthless unless you actually apply it. Your challenge: create your first batch of medieval superfood within the next 7 days. Not next month. Not when you have more time. Now, while the information is fresh and your motivation is high, start with the basic recipe. 1 pound of lean meat, half a pound of fat, 1/4 pound of berries. Document your process. Take photos. Make notes about what works and what doesn't. Most importantly, test your creation. Don't just make it and store it away. Actually eat it. Use it during physical activities. See for yourself how this 1,000-year-old technology compares to modern alternatives. This medieval superfood is your introduction to a much larger world of practical wisdom that our ancestors developed through centuries of necessity. They created solutions for water purification, shelter construction, medicine, tool making, and countless other challenges using nothing but observation, experimentation, and the drive to survive. If you found value in this exploration of ancient food technology, there's an entire library of forgotten knowledge waiting to be rediscovered. Techniques for building without modern materials, healing without pharmaceutical drugs, creating energy without electrical grids. The past isn't a collection of primitive attempts at modern solutions. It's a treasure trove of proven methods developed by people who couldn't afford to get things wrong. What we're really talking about here isn't just survival food, it's survival knowledge. The kind of deep practical understanding that makes you truly prepared for whatever challenges might come. When you master this medieval superfood technique, you join a tradition of human ingenuity that spans thousands of years. You prove to yourself that real security doesn't come from stockpiling products. It comes from understanding principles. You become someone who can solve problems instead of just consuming solutions. Someone who can create value instead of just purchasing it. Someone who carries human knowledge forward instead of just depending on systems you don't understand. That transformation from consumer to creator, from dependent to capable, might be the most important survival skill of all. The ancient secret lives on. From the frozen burial ships of Norse warriors to the desert strongholds of crusader armies, from the quiet cellars of medieval monasteries to your modern kitchen, this remarkable food technology represents something timeless about human ingenuity. Our ancestors faced a world far more dangerous and unpredictable than ours, with none of the technological conveniences we take for granted. Yet they created solutions so elegant, so effective, that they still outperform our most advanced alternatives. This isn't just a recipe for survival food. It's proof that human creativity and problem-solving ability transcend any particular era or technology. It's evidence that the most reliable solutions often come not from complexity, but from deep understanding of natural principles. When modern systems fail, when supply chains break, when the comfortable assumptions of industrial civilization prove fragile, the knowledge you've gained today will remain. The skills you develop will endure. The food you create will sustain. The medieval masters who developed this incredible technology couldn't have imagined the world we live in today, but they would recognize the fundamental human needs that drove their innovations. the need for nutrition, security, and the knowledge to take care of yourself and your family no matter what challenges arise. That need hasn't changed. The solutions they develop still work. The only question is whether we're wise enough to learn from them. Thank you for joining this journey into the remarkable world of medieval food science. If this exploration has opened your eyes to the incredible ingenuity of our ancestors, please like this video and subscribe for more investigations into the practical wisdom that shaped human civilization. Until next time, remember, the techniques that kept our ancestors alive for thousands of years might be exactly what we need to thrive in an uncertain future. Now go create some medieval magic in your own kitchen. The warrior within you is waiting to be fed.